Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to yet another edition of a Win or the Win podcast. My name is Edgar Chaput. I've been your host since the beginning, and I will be your host today. What a surprise. I didn't plan on recording a You Can't Do That Week 2. As I said last week, I never promised that to be a regular thing. But certainly last night's game between the Falcons and the Eagles, to be clear, this won't be a You Can't Do That episode, but maybe just a quick minute on how that game ended. A lot of the conversation is going to be about Saquon Barkley not catching that third down pass, a very catchable ball, very catchable. He drops it, butterfingers. The Eagles go for a field goal as opposed to maybe a touchdown or milking the clock, really. And so the Falcons get the ball back. And my issue is less Saquon Barkley. I mean, that is a problem, let me be clear. But my issue is more the Philadelphia defense. After going through the gamut of defensive coordinators, last year was a big issue. They have a new team there this year. And to play such soft defense on that final drive, or next to final drive. I mean, technically, the Eagles got the ball back, but the Falcons, the touchdown, the game-winning touchdown drive, if we're going to put it that way, the Philadelphia secondary was so soft. The linesman did not pressure Kirk Cousins in the slightest. He had all the time in the world to throw the ball. And the coverage on the receivers was soft. Now, I understand football enough to comprehend the strategy of, well, if the team on defense is winning the game and there's not much time left and it's late in the fourth quarter, especially if the other team doesn't have any timeouts, which Atlanta did not, then you can, if you're well set up for it and you have the personnel and you think you know what you're doing, I get it. You let the other team gain some significant yardage on the first play or two, keep the ball in the middle of the field, tackle them, don't let them get out of bounds, and let the clock keep running. So it's not that the first couple of plays went for chunky yardage that bothered me. It's that at no point at all ever on that drive, except maybe the very first play, was Philadelphia's coverage in the secondary tight. Even in the red zone, it wasn't tight. I was shocked. Absolutely shocked. Should Saquon have caught that pass? Yes. If he catches the pass, the Eagles win? Yes. But he didn't, and you have to make do with that, and you have to be ready to make a stop. Especially since the defense had played, maybe not great all night long, but it had played well. The fact of the matter is the Falcons had barely 15 points up until then. Anyways, I just thought it was shocking. You can't do that. You cannot be that soft in coverage throughout the entire freaking drive. You can't do that. But I did not press record today to criticize, but rather to praise a few teams and coaching staffs and players that I'd like to praise. Congratulations to these teams in week 2. Congratulations to the Green Bay Packers, Matt LaFleur, Josh Jacobs, and Malik Willis, the backup quarterback there in Green Bay. They defeated the Colts at home, 16-10. Not a very sexy score, not a very sexy game, unless you want a demonstration of acute, heightened NFL head coaching and play calling abilities. Jordan Love could not partake in this match. He injured himself on the next to last play in Brazil a week ago, or over a week ago. Technically, the game was on a Friday. And so Green Bay had to reckon with the fact that Malik Willis, formerly of the Titans, and the Titans didn't want to keep him, so that suggests a thing or two. They had to reckon with that and game plan for that. So what did they do? They recognized that Indianapolis, not only are the Colts not a great road team, it feels like never in their history have they been a great road team, but they're particularly porous against the run. And so Green Bay ran for 261 rushing yards on them. Josh Jacobs himself had 151 of those yards. And Malik Willis just didn't make critical errors. He certainly was not flamboyant. He didn't wow anybody, but he made exactly the right plays. Didn't have to do too much. Even threw a touchdown pass, and the defense took care of the rest. Was it a little bit close for comfort? They did need to make a stop with the Colts' quarterback, Anthony Richardson, going for a Hail Mary at the end. Yeah, it was close, but I think you have to respect the opponent. You have to respect the Colts. And Malik Willis is just not a great quarterback, but kudos to him for, quote, game managing, I guess, if you will. And speaking of game management, kudos to Matt LaFleur. He understood what he had. He understood what the task was. He understood the opposition. The Colts give up an unfathomably high number of rushing yards. So they just ran the ball down their throats. 40 minutes and 11 seconds of ball possession for Green Bay. 40 minutes and 11 seconds. I don't care how promising Anthony Richardson is. The Colts didn't even have the ball for 20 minutes in this game. That was a great performance, and that's why the Packers signed Josh Jacobs. So when they have to, they can put in a performance such as the one they did on Sunday in week 2. It's not that they need Josh Jacobs to run for 151 yards every single week when Jordan Love is healthy, but A, there's no guarantee that he will always be healthy, ergo their current predicament, and B, there's no guarantee that he's going to be lights out every single week. You're going to need Josh Jacobs. That's why you go out and sign a player, a running back of his caliber in the offseason. 13 rushing first downs as well. Great numbers for the Packers. It didn't result in a very sexy final score. I mean, I don't think anybody sees 16-10 and goes, wow, I need to watch that highlight reel. You probably don't, but if you're a big football fan such as myself and you're intrigued by how teams adapt on a week-to-week basis, especially in light of significant personnel absentees, it was quite an interesting game, and it was interesting to see how Matt LaFleur prepped his team and specifically his offense to play and eventually win that game. Kudos to the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this is a weird one, possibly, if only because Seattle's 2-0, and they haven't looked amazing in their 2 games. But I think the reason why I want to give the Seattle Seahawks a little bit of love is because the new coaching regime, Mike Macdonald, is in there now. He was formerly the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens right up until last season. His first head coaching job. They haven't let the ship sink, at least not yet. Could they have lost those first 2 games? Yeah. I mean, the game against the Patriots on Sunday at Foxborough went to overtime. It was a 23-20 overtime win. The Patriots, by no definition, played a bad game. They could have won that. Jacoby Brissett actually looks okay. Ramondre Stevenson is a good back. But so far, through 2 games, I have to say, Mike McDonald, has his group playing decent football. It feels like a continuation of the latter 2 Pete Carroll seasons, essentially ever since Geno Smith came to town. Geno Smith, who seemed to be washed up, his career's over, what is he going to do in the league? Why is Seattle even signing this guy? And he had a really pleasant 2022 campaign. Now, his 2023 wasn't quite as good as his 2022, but the Seahawks weren't bad. I mean, they still missed the postseason, but they weren't some kind of an awful team. And now they're 2-0. it has looked a little bit wonky at times. I think still nobody can explain why they decided to run the ball from their own end zone in week 1 against the Broncos, a play that led to a safety. And, they did benefit from a few New England miscues. The DK Metcalf touchdown, it doesn't make any... There's no explicable, logical, sensible reason why DK Metcalf, of all people, would be wide open for a bomb. So that's obviously a miscue by New England's secondary. So a little bit of luck, but, to be good, you do need to be at least a little bit lucky. And that's been operated in Seattle's favor. They look fine. I think they can be, if they continue to play the way they are now. By the way, they get to host Miami in week 3, and Miami, unfortunately, we already did an episode on this. They will not have Tua Tagovailoa. I'm not going to, I mean no disrespect to Skylar Thompson, but I'm not going to bet on him either. Seattle has a gorgeous opportunity to be 3-0. And you look at the Rams, who are 0-2. You look at the 49ers, who surprisingly are 1-1, and the Cardinals, who are 1-1. So even if San Francisco and Arizona win, as long as Seattle wins, they still lead this division. I think that's a good place for them to be in. I think it's a decent start to the season. And I think once again, arguably for the third successive campaign, I think the Seahawks are going to be a bigger threat than a lot of people, maybe myself included, thought they would be before the season commenced. I think they're either going to be a wild card team, or like last year, they might not get in, but they're going to threaten to get in until the very end of the season. I would suggest to not overlook the Seahawks. They might not wow anybody, but I think they're going to be like the 2022 Seahawks. They're always going to be there. They're always in a wild card spot, or they're on the bubble, and you won't be able to get rid of them until their season is officially over and they've lost in the wild card round, or they're mathematically eliminated in like week 18 or something like that. I think they're going to stick around. And lastly, this felt quite apropos because I poo-pooed this team last week. Congratulations to Antonio Pierce and the Las Vegas Raiders after an okay but clearly not good enough showing in week 1 versus the Los Angeles Chargers in LA. Raiders have still not had their home opener, 2 road games to start the season. They went into Baltimore. Now, the Ravens had lost in week 1. We all watched that game. Great game against the Chiefs. The narrowest of defeats, truly the narrowest of defeats, by a toe, literally. But they're very good at home openers. They don't tend to lose multiple consecutive games very often. Lamar Jackson, MVP. What can go wrong? Well, the Raiders, not only did they win 26-23 on the road, but they were trailing 23-13 in the fourth quarter. And I saw a bit of this game, and to me, Las Vegas played really well in the first quarter from a defensive perspective, and then everything went their way in the fourth quarter. Not only defensively, Max Crosby, 4 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, 2 QB hits, but even the offense got going. It's not always a very exciting attack. I think Gardner Minshew is a bit too limited in his abilities to make for a truly exciting attack. But when you have Devontae Adams making the catches he can do, I mean, the one where he's almost perpendicular, not perpendicular, but parallel with the ground, and his toes are touching the turf as he's falling down with the ball in his hands. That was an amazing catch. The touchdown catch was pretty good too. There was good coverage on that catch. But now you have Brock Bowers, the rookie tight end, 9 catches for 98 yards. He showed up too. And he made some catches in LA the week before. His presence wasn't as prominent in week 1, but he was there, and I noticed him in week 1, and he was even more prominent in week 2. So if Gardner Minshew can just try to limit the mistakes, and he did make a mistake. His interception was absolutely ridiculous. But if he can limit his mistakes and get the ball to guys like Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers, the Raiders don't have much of a running game, and I think that's going to be a problem. But I think they can be competitive. Can they be a wild card team? I don't know. I think the AFC is a little bit too tough. I struggle to envision them getting in. But honestly, it's funny, in the previous sequence, we talked about the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe, just maybe, the 2024 Las Vegas Raiders could be like the AFC Seattle Seahawks. Ironically, the Seahawks used to be an AFC team way back in the day. But maybe they could be the AFC Seahawks, where they're just, they're tough to get rid of. They keep hanging around into week 17, week 18, and only then do they get mathematically eliminated. I could see that happening, but there needs to be more performances like week 2 and less performances like week 1, especially from a coaching perspective. Reason why we talked about the Raiders in our "you can't do that" from week 1 is because of some dunderheaded decisions by Antonio Pierce. He was much better in week 2 as well. There you have it. That was another episode of A Win is a Win podcast. I have been your host, Edgar Chaput. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. It's a lot more fun being positive than being negative. So I wanted to, as we criticized a trio of teams last week, I wanted to shower a trio of teams with praise this week, and I was happy to do it. They earned it. Packers, Seahawks, Raiders, you did good in very different ways, but you did good. So thanks for listening. We will catch you very soon on the next one. Ciao, ciao.